It's very interesting too. Not that we ever judge customers, but when you walk into someone's home and you look at the art they have and the way it's displayed, it tells you something. It's interesting.
I do not like this painting, Charlie. Smug aura mocks me.
On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk Samsung's Neo 8K TVs, more than rollers, and mid-market success. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 477, Application Engineers. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Brad Hinsey. He's the EVP Global Marketing for Crestron. How are you, sir?
I'm great. So good to see you, Matt.
It's been way too long, my friend.
Yes, it has.
Then we also have Mr. Scott Stevenson. He is the Senior Director of Product Global Motorization over at Hunter Douglas. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic.
Thank you for joining us as well. It's been too long for you too. So this is fantastic. We're getting the gang back together. All right, gentlemen, we are going to kick this off with a story that comes to us from CE Pro. Samsung's 2025 Neo QLED TV sets are going to feature its largest consumer model to date, as well as expand their art display feature to models outside strictly the frame product. Go read through this article. Zach covers essentially the whole gamut of their new lineup of Neo QLEDs that are a variety of 8K and 4K, as well as the largest ever consumer display from them at 111 inches. And as I said, adding the art store to a larger range of TVs. Brad, let me start with you on this. There is a ton of entertaining stuff in this story, including Vision AI and click to search and hand motion controls via a watch and all this other stuff. The big thing I want to kind of focus on for a moment, though, is the push for 8K displays. We know as technology evolves, it's always the bigger and better, best thing. Is there really a use case yet, though, for this push to not only 8K displays, but also 111-inch TVs outside of like a media room? Where are these going?
I think it's a good question. I mean, we're clearly still very early in the 8K era, as like meaning that, hey, there's just loads and loads of content. But I think that we have to think about or consider the screens for more than just watching 8K of one thing at a time, but consider the multi-view capabilities, right? The ability to see more streams all at once, right? How can you pack more of those into a single stream? But you always have to keep iterating and keep building on top of these technologies. If you don't put them out there, sometimes you don't find these great use cases. But I think that we will get there, right? More and more content will be there. I think that the multi-view capabilities, seeing lots of different stuff all in the screen at the same time, is really interesting. I think we've all become more and more familiar with that on our desktop, right? Mm-hmm. Having all these windows open simultaneously and side by side has really changed that workflow. What might that look like inside of your home, right? Watch multiple pieces of content, or have great content and maybe you're looking at your front door or some other camera feed, or there's a lot of flexibility that you could unlock when you have more pixel real estate to work with.
Yeah, and I think that's a portion of why they're going so large as well, right? Mm-hmm. Is it just gives you so much more real estate to play with. Yep. Scott, when you see this, the other thing that really stood out to me was the expansion of their art store. Almost every display that we either sell or install, whether they're buying a frame or not, the question usually comes is, can it do that like frame thing? Right? Even sometimes when it's an actual frame, which is an entertaining conversation. Is the art mode, the, kind of stand by, put a piece of something on the display so it's not a black box, is that becoming the de facto standard as far as what people are looking for when they're purchasing a larger set?
I definitely think it's one of the things that people are really at least considering. Maybe it's not the de facto standard, but it's something that would lean somebody towards that direction. I think there's always been this battle of the TV, and it is this big black thing on your wall or your stand when it's not in use. And everybody kind of was like, how can we do this better? I do think it'll be interesting to see as it does get rolled out to, displays that are not designed specifically for it, how people perceive it. Because, I mean, with like a frame TV, it's not just that, hey, you've got art on there,
Mm-hmm.
it's the way that art is displayed. It's the non-shiny screen. It's the that matte kind of look to it, that it actually looks like it could be canvas. And I think I don't know if that will get lost when it goes to these more traditional screen types, and if people will actually then go, okay, that doesn't look like art, that looks very fake.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch that because I've seen both, and in the right room you can get away with it. And again, depending on the content, you can
Hmm.
get away with it. If it's family vacation photos, it plays no matter what it is. If it's a really cool piece of, modern art, you're right, it does typically get lost there just a little bit if it's got the gloss and it's hanging in the corner because it's on
Hmm.
a, corner articulating mount.
Well, I think that that's one of the things they will need to address in the art store
Mhm.
is, helping people choose art that will work really well on the right type of glass,
Yeah.
so that it doesn't show poorly. But I think that opening up this kind of capability is a good way to get broader appeal with other members of the household. Right.
Hmm.
Make it so that, it isn't just the big black thing, as you said, Scott, on the side of the wall. But I think it's good for them to expand it, but it will require a lot of handholding to make sure that it doesn't just look really cheesy and terrible.
It's very interesting too. Not that we ever judge customers, but when you walk into someone's home and you look at the art they have and the way
Mm-hmm.
it's displayed, it
Mm-hmm.
tells you something. It's interesting. Now that they have access to a big store, it'll tell you even more. All right, let's change topics for a second. This comes to us from CE Pro. Hunter Douglas data suggests dealers should sell solutions beyond the roller shade. From their custom integration program, it suggests that limiting solutions to just roller and screen shades is causing integrators to leave money on the table in their projects. Scott, obviously, we're going to start with you because you might have a little bit of inside information on this. The roller is a great shade. It fits a large variety of applications. There's obviously a large option of shade fabrics, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but it is that basic roller shade. Are integrators leaving not only money but design options on the table by only traditionally focusing on rollers and then maybe a honeycomb here and there?
I mean, I do think it's something that a lot of integrators just don't know how to address, quite frankly. For years, frankly, the only option that really was available to the channel was roller screen shades, and it does simplify their lives, quite
Mm-hmm.
frankly. It's relatively easy to sell a roller shade. It's okay. Do you want white or black, and do you want 1%, 3%, 5%, 10%? I mean, it really isn't that difficult. As soon as you start talking about these other types of options, whether it be sheer shadings or drapery or Romans, um, all of a sudden you're talking about design, you're talking about application. It's not just okay, again, back to you want 1% or 3%. It's what is the right type of product for your particular situation. Do you have a lot of glare coming off water? Do you have things like that where you want to be able to see out but still soften the light? Okay, now if we're talking Roman, oh my God, you're talking about the an infinite array of potential fabrics and that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. It can be intimidating, and we get that definitely. It was interesting. I was at the ProSource Summit
Mm.
last week, and so was had a chance to talk to a lot of existing dealers of ours, and also, some ones who were coming up from being, wanting to talk to us about potentially being a dealer. And, it was really interesting that our dealers who are the most successful with us are the ones who have figured out that ability to sell the design aspect of it, and have, kind of branched out from selling roller shades. And then when we were talking to the ones who are, prospective or potentially interested, that's by far the thing that they fear the most is, oh my God, I have to actually learn fabrics and try and sell this. And but I think what our data does show is, again, only 40% of our sales through the CI channel are roller screen shades. So that means, 60%, the majority are not. You are losing a lot of opportunity if that's all you're offering your customers.
Yeah, that's a great point. Brad, when you see this, when you follow this, Scott made a great point about dealers having to learn the design side. There is also a lot of competition in the shade world for basic shades. Is it not something that dealers really have to look at if they want to be extremely successful with shades? Is start to understand the artistic aspect and the design focus of that entire catalog of shades, and then, gosh, the catalog of fabrics, not to mention customer supplied fabrics.
I think that it really comes down to what kind of business do you want to run, and what kind of relationship do you want to have with your customers. Do you want to just provide a commodity product and just like, here, take what I've got to offer you. I'll show up and help you out, versus that consultative. What are you trying to accomplish here? Let me inspire you with the possibilities, and then let's work really closely on a custom solution, right? And I think that there is certainly a lot of opportunity for more integrators to have that kind of a relationship with their customers, take the time, show the breadth of knowledge related to what is possible with all of these products, and then help the customers kind of realize their own vision for their space. And so I think you see this across many product categories. The broader knowledge you have, the broader experience applying different technologies, whether it be in entertainment, lighting, shading, and go deeper in that relationship with the customer, you may be able to uncover more revenue and more project opportunities in an ongoing basis. And so you can really grow your business by focusing on becoming that deep and broad expert for those customers. And so yeah, if that's the kind of business that you want, it will pay in spades if you can deliver on that expertise and help them realize their visions for their own home.
It's interesting. I think a lot of times when you start talking about these other types of shade styles, people immediately go to the, oh my God, I've got to worry about design and fabrics and whatever. But I think one of the big things that dealers need to think about is you're becoming an application expert here. It's not just about design. I mean, in all of their other product categories, CIs are incredible application engineers. I mean, you are basically, you have this array of products, and you're trying to figure out what product, that's in your offering suits the needs of this particular client. And it's really no different in this scenario. It's, before you even start worrying about fabric and colors and all that stuff, you need to figure out what's the right product for that particular application. And sometimes it is a screen shade. Sometimes that's the perfect product for that application. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes something else is going to work far better in serving that client's needs.
I love the allusion to the lighting category that Brad brought up, because it's not that hard to sell a pot light, a can light, a recessed light, wherever you are. Terminology differs, but that is the low hanging fruit of lighting installation and lighting design. And I always feel that shades are kind of the same thing. Of, you can really dig into, as you said, the application side, which is the first step, and then you can look at fabrics and those choices beyond. And there's so many cool things you can do once you start learning that you can layer, right? And you can layer a shear and then a blackout, or a shear and a light filtering, and get into really changing the dynamic of the space, which again is what your customer at the end of the day is typically looking for. Is not, they're not just looking for a shade. Otherwise they'd probably go somewhere else. Not that we want them to do that. That's not great. All right, let's change topics for a second and hit our last story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Systems. Mastering the Mid-Market. It's a little interview with Lindsay from Vanco and Central Florida's Dr. Hook It Up, who reveals how his business has been steadily growing for over 25 years, working in the mid-market. Go read through the article. It's very interesting to kind of follow Ken Ramsey's business over the last 25 years as he talks about where they've started, where they are, and how they dip their toes in a couple of other factors as well. But essentially, he is focused on starting out as a satellite integrator with 20 trucks on the road, and then they got into surround sound system hookups and basic media room setups essentially, and where he's grown from there. Scott, let me start with you on this one. I love this story. I question whether this is mid-market or entry level. Again, that's going to differ depending on your region and your definition of those terms. That being said, he's got a really nice business going here. Is mid-market a sustainable industry within our channel? Is there enough on the entry and mid-range of that to long-term see the success of that market section?
I mean, there's no question there is, I think this article proves there is a customer base out there that needs this kind of solution. I think for a lot of integrators, if they try and go into that using their means of doing business that they're doing today, where it's highly custom, really focused on solutions that meet individual needs, they're going to fail. Mm-hmm. They are going to they're not going to make profit on it. They might generate top line revenue, but they're not going to generate bottom line revenue.
Yeah.
But you really need to streamline your processes. Have a rinse and repeat type of model where it's the same products, the same processes. You go in, you get the job done, you're out of there quickly. Because if you try and do it with a custom mindset, you're gonna lose your shorts.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Brad. I think that the success of the mid-market is based on systems, and kind of the example I'll use is I've got a friend in Texas, and he does a lot of great work, but the majority of his work is a couple Sonos audio products, some Z-Wave door locks, a alarm panel that connects to all these things, a little bit of entry level lighting control. And it's a repeatable package in a system that, and I don't mean system like control system, but in like a business system. It's a business setup where he can go through, meet with a customer, hit the checkbox of what they want, and then deliver it the next day. And he's got a couple of guys that run out, and they literally just, to Scott's point, they rinse and repeat this for everything that is, shall we say, not custom or high. I want to say high market, but something below luxury. Is that really where our channel kind of has to go to that systems based approach?
Yeah, I believe so. I think that there's a lot of scale that's available to us in that entry level and mid market. I think that there is, if you go to look at the demographics, there's a lot of disposable income in those income brackets that are in that mid market. There's interest, and there's certainly a need. And we have exactly what they want, but we have to build a business for that, right? Integrators have to build a business for that. So do manufacturers, right? In fact, that's why we introduced Crestron Home, right? Crestron Home is designed for easy repeatability, predictability, it's configuration, it's not programming, right? So you can go and you can do these projects in a more systematized way rather than some science fair project for some super high end, crazy, wild type of a home. But an integrator that designs their business around this opportunity can go and find a lot of business, can go build a really thriving business in all kinds of market conditions. I believe, and I think that this dealer in Florida is a really good example of somebody that built a business around this concept, and they've kind of thrived within that. Now, not everybody wants to be in that market. That's okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are integrators that want to serve just the very, very high end. Great, go knock yourself out. But there is opportunity there, and I think we need to find a way to unlock that within our industry. There are a lot of homeowners that are moving up that ladder too. So why not get started with them now, right?
Yeah.
The mobile device revolution, the technology that is available to consumers today, has given people an appetite for these kinds of things within their home. So why don't we go and meet those needs by delivering a solution for them at a price point that is acceptable to that group of people, and that is still profitable for integrators and for their business. I think, look at the Tesla, look at what MyQ is doing, look at all of these solutions that exist today that are opening the door, and our integrators actually capitalizing on some of those opportunities. I think we should do more of that.
Is this flipping? And again, I'm trying to be nice here, but is this not somewhat flipping the CI channel on its head a little bit? That I would argue that almost everything beneath the high end is getting away from the custom aspect of it.
Well, I think that it really depends on what do you mean by custom exactly, right? Because you could have custom in terms of choose the colors that work well for you, choose the way you want this to function. But I, as an integrator, I'm just going to configure it, and I'm not going to write a whole bunch of custom code, right? There's still rails that you live within, and there are a large swath of consumers that will be perfectly acceptable for them, and they wouldn't know otherwise, right? But if you mean custom, like I'm going to start with a blank program, no code, I'm going to write it all for you. It will be a very specific UI to you, right? You can tell me where you want buttons, how you want them labeled. Yeah, I think that world has evolved dramatically. There's a place for that, but that place is much smaller, I think. So yeah, I think the definition of custom has to evolve. And where integrators spend their time in delivering on a project for a homeowner has to evolve as well in order to unlock some of these opportunities.
To Brad's point from before, where he was talking about, like getting to some of these customers earlier, maybe when they're, not yet ready for a full custom type system, but hey, now they're your client, 10 years later. We've actually had several of our CI dealers that have essentially created side businesses, or a whole separate entity that is focused entirely on window coverings, and essentially just opening their doors to anybody who would be interested in putting shades in their windows, because they're like, if somebody's building a house or buying a new house, they need shades, and and in a lot of cases, when they realize they can be motorized, well, they want that, and these integrators have been successful in creating a whole separate business that really, in this case, is targeted mid-market.
Yeah.
It's not entry level. It's not. I mean, they're not selling at a price point that you're, going to get something from Lowe's or like that. No, it's a custom product. They're still helping them pick out the right product, the right fabric, etc. But it is much more of a mid-market customer. But what they're finding is that in a lot of cases, once that customer learns that they have this other business that does these other things, then it becomes, oh, could you do Sonos for me? We've been talking about trying to do some lighting. What about that? And it's evolving that customer who might never have found them into something that becomes a long-term customer for them.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, gentlemen, we are going to leave it there. Thank you both for joining us. Scott, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Hunter Douglas, where can they do that?
Well, you can get me scott.stevenson@hunterdouglas.com or LinkedIn.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mr. Hinsey, if people want to connect with you, learn more about Crestron, where can they do that?
Crestronhome.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn at just Brad Hinsey.
Excellent. Thank you both again for joining us. Thank you for joining us as well. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on most of the socials. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AV Nation.